Hello, audience and audience online. So I'm aware there's a mixture of people from sixth form up to very, very senior professors in the room. So this is going to be a nice, interesting blend between sustainability from Kelly, but also security, which is the befuddlement or the confusion of how do you create sustainable infrastructure for AI, but also to make it secure from it. So before I start really going into this, I tend to start with a kind of an interesting example. Before that, though, I want to talk about research because I think people outside university sometimes think we are magicians or wizards who sit in a tower, think of these ideas, but actual science nowadays is teams of people, very diverse, very interesting. And a lot of the problems we look at, if you look at trillion-dollar industries or trillion-pound industries about software and computing, you need teams of people. So the work I'm presenting today isn't just driven by me, it's driven by a whole bunch of people you can see here from it. Okay. And this type of work you do has a lot of company interest. So at university, it's not just a bunch of papers. A lot of these companies you see here are very interested because they want to solve these problems. Also, maybe want to take money as well from there, both at the same time. Okay. This video, some might recognize it if they have children. It's called Baby Shark. This is the most viewed video on YouTube. I think it's around 10 to 11 billion views. So as an exercise, you might think, how much energy has this video used? So you think about this. Well, a YouTube data center is very efficient. Okay, a data center is the big power plant computing, or YouTube is on. To stream 1 minute is around 0.002 kilowatt hours. Very, very efficient. Transfer from the data center to your device, again, it's really, really efficient, 0.01 kilowatts. The device, your smartphone, if it wasn't eventually efficient, it would not run for very long. And it's around 17 megabytes, the size of the file, very efficient. 10 billion views. So watching this video once, you might think this is a very low number. But if you crunch the numbers, this comes to a number of this. This is 1.5 trillion watt hours or 1,500 gigawatts hours. If you want a comparison, that is the same as the population of Malawi for 1 year consumption. Okay? The whole population, about 90 million people. There's about 1 million tons of CO2 and about 350,000 cars consuming from it. So that's a really big number, okay? And this is only one video, okay? A single video on YouTube. There are many other applications, videos, devices that consume more than this from it. So if we are able to say we can make things 2% more efficient, that is a huge number, okay? And it's even for entertainment. Think of something maybe like healthcare or defense. These things you might argue are maybe more critical to a nation. A video for this, huge numbers. So even making a small dent is really important from there, okay? On to my talk. I think everyone agrees nowadays that things like cybersecurity is really important, especially in the last few years from that, actually. Cybersecurity is important. It isn't just the idea of we have nation states, we have defense systems. It's also just privacy of your data, someone hacking your system, someone ransoming your data from it, protecting people who are marginalized. Cybersecurity isn't necessarily threatening to destroy things, actually can into the physical things and risk of life. It's also a risk of place in society, well-being from it. And at the same time, sustainability is really important as well for many multitude of reasons, whether there's economic incentives, climate change incentives, changing climate, geopolitical strategy, all these things are really important from it, both for an individual, but also nations and companies. And in the bottom right here, you see online, a very small box saying new AI technologies. So AI is going fast, okay? I think people maybe are not aware that this stuff is all in the background and it's being underpinned to every computer we have. When you use Google, that is AI. It's recommending things to you from it. If you use YouTube, it's using AI from there. So it's really underpinned everything we're doing from that. It will do fantastic things, but it might also come some issues from there as well. Okay. I want to talk about one thing specifically. So I talked to a lot of researchers and companies who talk a lot about deep learning and AI, But actually, when I ask them, actually, what is it? They can't really explain to me what this thing is, and they do research area. Very confusing. So I want to talk very quickly about deep learning. So nowadays, people talk about AI in the last 5-10 years. They kind of talk about deep learning specifically from it. Okay, they're not anything new. They've been around since the 1960s and 70s, but now they're actually being applied to lots of domains. So you may have seen on the news internet, you can make deep learning type of AI play games better than humans. Okay, they can find anomalies in healthcare, cancer detection from there. It can find objects. It can do traffic. It can do self-driving cars, find genomic sequencing. All these things are really exciting. Okay, AI, specifically in this room, well, no, AI has made their jobs easier in many ways, but also can allow us to do some things we could not do before. I want to talk very quickly about deep learning because it's not a magical concept from there. It's actually quite straightforward how it works. So deep learning is a subset of AI and machine learning methods. So in the future, even sixth form, deep learning is in the family of AI, but it's not AI. Different things entirely. Okay, it's about neural networks, and these are modeled on neurons that you find in the human and animals, because how brains work and neurons work, and really they're based on vector mathematics and probability theory. So with some clever mathematics and probability, you can build this neural network, and it can do some very interesting stuff to find images, find objects from it by learning from the data if it's right or wrong from there. So next time, if you're learning about vector mathematics in sixth form, it is really useful because honestly, if you understand those concepts, deep learning becomes much more straightforward from there. It's not, say, rocket science from the scientists. In this case, it is quite straightforward in them techniques, but how you apply them can be complicated from there. So again, deep learning is just matrix and vector operations. It's the bare bones. So multiplying, adding, transforming. But really, if you think about these conceptually, this deep learning isn't just floating in the ether. It runs on a computer hardware, like any other software. Okay, so here you have a neural network on the left. It runs on a GPU that you might not get a hold of because it's very in demand, and it does things like find objects, find bikes, find cars. So just interesting caveats. We use things like GPUs because they're very, very fast at doing multiplication and addition. Okay, you can do deep learning on anything from it. It's just a bit slower, but these devices are very, very good and very fast at running additions, multiplication. Hence why we use them a lot. Okay, so that's a bit of a preamble to deep learning. It's running in systems. I want to talk about two things: sustainability of AI and systems, and security from there. These two things seem quite separate, but actually you think about these at the end, you'll see these things are coming interrelated from there. Okay. So Kelly has talked about the big stats of sustainability. I'm going to talk a little bit actually about engineering in the computer itself. Actually, what's really happening from there? So there is a growing electricity consumer environmental footprint from ICT. For example, if you want to manufacture a device, I think you have to run it for like 8, 9, 10 years to kind of make equivalent in the carbon emissions. It's a long, long time. I have a computer that's 10 years old. It's not very good at all from now. And ultimately, these computers use energy because it's time and cost. If I turn a computer on and do nothing, it's consuming electricity. It uses energy from there. And computers have a variable power draw. So which means if it's doing nothing, the energy is this. If I start playing video games, or I start doing my homework, it makes it go higher from there. Okay. And how many of us may be guilty of leaving the computers on at night? I am sometimes from there. Smartphones in our pockets, not touching it until evening time, all adds up with the million devices we have. So in terms of AI, there's a lot of data. And think of YouTube and Google Mail and all these mail services. They house them in big warehouses of computers, like thousands of computers. Okay, so you have this massive building, typically outside the city, for the UK, not in outside London, outside Manchester. The big ones in Europe around Dublin. From there, a lot of the tech companies have house there, and they have thousands and thousands of the computers. And in AI, they have these GPUs, and computers are very good at doing AI. And the joke I kind of make is, these buildings are extremely complex hairdryers. Okay, I say this because computers, at the end of the day, convert electricity to heat. Okay, yeah, there's a bit of light, bit of other stuff in there, but ultimately, if I didn't care about the software, it's converting electricity to heat. Hence why you put your laptop on your lap, it gets hot. Move it off from that. Imagine about 1,000 machines from it. Okay? It's really complex hairdryers, but it does something valuable. It makes software run. It makes data use. It's very useful from there. Okay. Hence why there is a continuous need to make these things more efficient, energy efficient from there. Because again, think of those numbers. If I can make it 1% more efficient for Baby Shark, that is a really big saving from it. Okay. This is a problem because 1,000 of these devices is the same as most towns in Europe in terms of power consumption, energy usage from it. You know, these really big scale problems from it. Also the limitations. I can't keep cramming machines in the same building because actually it gets too hot. There's physical limitations from there. The other problem is what we call fueling the AI rat race. So for those who maybe switched on to AI, there's lots of competitions. You know, can we beat the best human in AlphaGo? Can we do a self-driving car? Can we beat the best team in Dota, a video game, at their own game from it? Okay, it's because if you look at the AI community, there is a rat race. Okay, which means what they really care about is making the things more accurate, better than the next from it, irrespective of the cost. So I'll throw $10 million at a problem to make something better from it. There is a model called GPT-3. Okay, it is the most advanced language model in existence that's public. Okay, it's so good that actually they think it's very hard for a human to distinguish if who's talking to them or not. Okay, that took about $10 million to actually make once. Okay, $10 million, and it's worth $1 billion now from it. Okay, and the problem is that you might argue that only gives me 0.6% more accurate. That's how good the model. And I had to throw $10 million at this problem, previously $1 million from there. Okay. So this idea of buying results, which means only the tech companies with the massive treasure troves of machine and data throw data to retrain to design these models, really expensive to make a fraction of a change. You might argue is that useful or not, but that's a different discussion. And think of AlphaGo. They train a model to make AlphaGo, you know, to beat the best, one of the grandmasters of Go, which is like a board game. You see here. This is the cost it took in comparison. It took about 1,000 hours, 5,000 GPUs, and it costs around 220,000 kilowatt hours, which 80,000 vehicle miles. So you might argue that if I said to you, "Hey, drive your car for this long and you become a grandmaster," it'd be great. Sign me up here. Fantastic. But you might argue, is that a good use of our time from there from computer? Because we're going to do this again constantly from there. You might argue, well, the emissions to train a human in this might be more. But that becomes a bit more tricky to figure out from there. So that's sustainability. I want to talk a bit about security. It is a massive topic, so I'm not going to talk every single attack. I want to give you one specific example you may have overlooked, because people think about hacking a train and the train stops, or I take someone's data and put it online. That stuff is definitely bad. But I'll talk about one precisely, which actually companies are very, very worried about, and actually feeds into this problem: theft of your deep learning and the AI from it. Again, say I'm a big tech company or a small company. I invest heavily into some AI, and then someone steals the model. I lose my I use my criticality of my business. I use key assets from there. This is called deep learning model stealing. Okay, and it's a really big problem. It costs the UK something like 60 to 80 billion pounds a year on year. It's getting bigger and bigger from it. It's a huge number of theft. Okay, there are three things why it's a problem. Again, property theft. I spent all my efforts and my time, and my key business value is my model, AI. If someone takes that and reverse engineers it, I'm in trouble. There is ransoming. Again, same thing. I take the model and build it myself. So I figure AI model, give me more money, I'll release it. Or give me more money, I'll just use a competitive advantage. And this one's probably more timely, espionage. Think I am a nation state and I want some sort of drone that's very advanced to do good object detection. If that drone ends up in the hands of a rival, competitor, or another nation state, it's a matter of time until they figure out how it works. And again, if I'm doing recent development, I spent 5 years and billions of dollars to make my model really good, and someone could take it in a few weeks to take my model, I've lost the advantage. Okay, and there's a really big problem about this. It's not just in terms of cost. So again, these models cost tens of millions, many of them. Attackers can use it to make more attacks. If I know how your system works, I know your AI model, I know everything about you, then I can go off and attack the system even more from there. The big one really, there's a question about the incentive. I think one people overlook is the reputational damage. If I'm Google and I say, sorry, I'm offline for a month, I'm finished as a company from it, because then people will come into from it. If there's an attack and I say, I'm Amazon, sorry, I've lost all your models, someone took them all, the companies will vanish overnight from it. So actually the company's reputation is really important for them because it's a fast moving industry. And think of the old guard, like Hewlett-Packard, IBM, they're still around, don't be wrong from it. Compared to the new generation of tech companies, they have less influence and they are very worried about in the same position. Data privacy issues, again, you can do it to do model inference, which is the idea of I can figure out someone's information from the model, and you lose advantage. That's the real big problem from it. AI is so cutting edge, any improvement's good. If I can steal that model easily, big problem from there. Okay. So let's amalgamate the two things together. We want secure infrastructure for AI and sustainable AI infrastructure. Sounds like a great idea because making an AI infrastructure that does all the wonderful things in our life, make the curtains move in this room, make the lights go up, move our data around, make my life easier. It is a core part of the global decarbonization strategy. Kelly mentioned that we're moving traditional pen and paper to ICT. Okay? That's great to make things less carbon from there. Okay. It gives you sophisticated defensive and offensive capabilities. The government released, as of this year, a new cyber strategy. We want to be the powers of cybersecurity. They do mention offensive capabilities. Especially in the last few years, people know about news, information, geopolitical strategy. There's capability of infrastructure to be defensive, but also have some way to have countermeasures against it from it. And also achieve energy independence and power sovereignty. So the idea would be, again, very timely from it, I want to have my nation create my own energy to run my infrastructure. So if for some reason it gets cut off, my system can still run from there. Sounds very appealing to many people in government from it. However, there's a whole bunch of problems with this. Okay, it comes to ultimately this: how can I have a really advanced security infrastructure, really complicated and powerful, and reduce power consumption at the same time? Those two things are connected. If I want something more secure and more powerful, I use more resource, more electricity from it. Okay, so those two things are counteracted to some extent from it. It requires materials to build computers, hardware, material extraction. You have to use a bunch of lasers, wafering chemicals. It's really, really expensive. There is a danger of greater reliance on AI infrastructure. So AI does everything. If I have an AI infrastructure to make my nation secure and my power goes offline, I have no AI. My AI is no longer useful to me from it. And there is a growing demand to ICT usage, as Kelly has mentioned from it. That is going up in many, many ways. Give a very quick overview, some reasons as to why. Moore's law, many people in the room might have heard this before. It's not a law, it's an observation. So back in 1960s and 50s, a guy called John Moore said, I think that every 2 years, the number of transistors, the tiny, tiny metal things that make computers work, will double into the same space. So we can double from 10 to 20 to 40 to 80. And if you look at the general trends on the left-hand side, this is the number of transistors on the processor, computer, it goes up pretty well from it, okay? And that has been the guiding principle for designing new hardware and computers for many, many years, okay? Problem with this is that it's getting very hard because when you get so small to like 6 nanometers between transistors, you get some very interesting effects. Actually, quantum tunneling, the idea would be, things actually make things work anymore, or it's so expensive to run in terms of heat-wise from it. So this is kind of coming to an end, or at the very least becoming very difficult to keep making. It's too expensive to keep doing this from there. Also want to talk about changing growth. So when I was young, data was probably kilobytes, megabytes if I'm lucky from it. Some people maybe a bit older might think bytes is a big. Nowadays we have gigabytes and terabytes from there. This is a Super Famicom from the 1990, or called the SNES in US and English. This had 1 to 20 gigabytes of RAM and 4 to 6 megabytes of storage from there. That was a really cutting edge piece of hardware at the time from it. Okay, compared to now, that's nothing. It's actually tiny. It's a fraction of what we have. This is the IBM 360 from 1970s. This is the production state-of-the-art enterprise computing system, used for many years, 8 megabyte main storage, 512 kilobyte storage from it. Again, I think my computer I have at home is up 2,000 times more powerful than this, and it's a fraction of the cost. This cost about $500,000 at the time, before inflation from it. So actually, because we made things better, actually we use more of it from there, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second. This is a picture of Cottonopolis, which is the nickname for Manchester's cotton industry and the building fibers. Back in the Industrial Revolution, they already worried actually about the rate of power consumption they require and the emissions they're taking to live in Manchester. They said, if we keep going at this pace, we're going to run out of wood. We can't burn we can't make enough coal from there. They said, don't worry about it too much, because what's going to happen is we're going to invent some sort of process to make it so it's more energy efficient. We'll save, Industrial Revolution will be fine. The emissions will go down from it. As Kelly's mentioned, that is not true. Okay. The rebound effect is the newer concept, but it's originally called Jevons paradox, which is named after William Jevon on the right-hand side. He's an economist, and he observed in Parliament saying, actually, if you make something more efficient, technology or government policy, you increase usage. If I have a road that's busy and build another lane, I have more cars, more traffic from there. If I'm a factory and I can make cars quicker, I now can make more cars. There's more demand for it. In IT, we're all guilty of this. How many computers do you have in your home right now? On you, for example. I have 3 or 4, and that's actually not that many for my household. Many people have their smartphones, laptops, maybe desktops, their games consoles, their TVs. These are computers. In the past, a home would have 1 computer, probably for a whole family from it, okay? Data's gotten bigger. We want better quality video. We want faster computers, okay? Efficiencies made us actually go up massively, as Kelly has mentioned from it. And the interesting thing about this, it's kind of ironic, is that progress as scientists to make it more efficient does drive consumption up. It's a really difficult quagmire to come to terms of. Actually, if I cared about making things go down, I make things more efficient, it makes it go up from there. Okay. So very, very quickly about this. Imagine I could say definitively, I've made a computer that is the most efficient thing possible physically. It cannot be any more efficient. It's thermodynamics, everything about it is so efficient, it can't go anymore. If I did that, I'll just build more of them, more and more and more and more and more. So actually, even with the most efficient system that exists for energy efficiency, I will still consume more demand because I can do more from it. I can do processing quicker from it. So it's a really big problem. And the other thing I'd say is this graph is the CO2 emissions per year per billion tons. Okay, this has been the historical trend going up every year. And they've said, if you want to stop any rise in temperature, you need to make emissions go from here to 0 in about, well, now 3 years. Imagine I said to a world, do that right now, what do you think would happen? There'd be pandemonium, actually. We'll shut off entire factories, roads. This thing seems very far away from it. If that is going to go up or down, it's hard to do. But actually doing this in a time frame is very, very difficult, across all industries, especially ICT. So that's kind of the imperative of sustainability and especially security. I'm going to basically just showcase these things quickly. I won't talk about them too much, but there is real incentive and work from our group, but also other groups to try to solve this problem. Okay, air infrastructure, you can make it 30% less power cost in terms of resource usage. Think of a data center for AI with some clever mathematics and some software design. You can make it 30% less. That's about $50 million for a single data center from it, immediately from it. Because AI is actually a really big problem. Again, the same thing. You can make deep learning models optimized for hardware to run really, really fast and make it 40% less. Just, again, some clever engineering, clever mathematics from there we done in the group. So 2 last slides I have. I think if you want to solve this problem of consumption, I think looking to the natural world or looking at thermodynamics is a really good idea from it. This is a picture of the evolution of human species. It's a tree diagram. Okay, so we have homini here, and we have Homo sapiens. Some are up here, in the very top. I saw this in the Natural Museum of New York, and they had this in a great tree. I'm thinking, wow, think about billions of years, whole generations of species, and energy consumption and emissions have kind of gone off of the direction and kind of, no longer exist with us or changed from it, okay? Because it's naturally, it adapts to the environment. Things happen and species, they exist, they were around, but some entire trees have kind of just disappeared from it. Think about it in terms of ICT. If you had an ICT system growing like a plant or a species, sometimes it will go off in different directions and say we can't exist anymore, actually, because the environment's not suited anymore. You could argue that the ones that are around now have been those who've been quite fortunate, but also perhaps have adapted well to the environment they have. And I think there's a really big lesson in terms of computing systems and engineering systems. We should think of ICT computing systems in a way of a natural formation. They should adapt to their surroundings. Currently, you could argue they're quite artificial in terms of a magic black box that keeps efficiency making things from there. Actually, it should be adapting its usage, and it should be adapting energy consumption from it. And very quickly about this, what this means for AI is I'm really big advocacy for energy adaptation of systems, which means think of the natural world. I would probably argue I'm smarter than a fruit fly. I hope I am, okay? But I also use much more, my carbon footprint, my consumption of energy is much higher from there, okay? So I should say, if my AI computer has loads of energy, it should have a very, very smart, sophisticated, fast, activities from there. If I give it no energy, it should be obtuse, which is a fancy way of saying it shouldn't be very good from there. Okay, it should be very slow. I expect this. What about things like cunning models, big models, small models? Currently in AI, there's no connection between how much energy AI uses and how good it actually is from there. You have models that are very, very expensive, but they do nothing. That's absolutely pointless from there, or very bad. So actually allowing us to adapt to the natural world, so plant, elegans, fruit fly, dog, human, actually there should be proportional energy usage across all engineering. And I think in the last few years, people have been really looking at other computers that are not even silicon. Can you grow a computer? Can you make it grow and adapt its software? You can argue that our AI itself is growing and adapting itself, but still using hardware that's kind of fixed. So the future for this is actually trying to align AI sophistication that's secure, and any levels we have from there. So on that, I conclude. So thank you very much. Any questions?